Ladies and gentlemen, we now enter the next panel discussion, which is extremely exciting because it will present how Indian companies have managed to build CSR, communities, recreating products, services, delivery models, and yet they've tried to become more competitive. For this exciting but a 30-minute panel discussion, let me start by inviting A. Vaidish, who is the Managing Director India for GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceuticals. He is also the VP South Asia for the firm. He'll be joined by Dr. Rajiv Kumar Gupta, who's the Managing Director for GNFC, Dr. Ajay Bakshi, who's the Managing Director for Manipal Hospitals, and Satish Kumar, who's the Managing Director for Asia and Latam operations of D-Light Industries. The panel will be moderated by Sonali Krishna, who's the anchor and editor for Brand Equity. May we have the panel members on the dais, please? And can we have more chairs on the dais, please?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try and make this very exciting, and I'm going to try and wrap this up in 30 minutes as promised. All of us have heard from Professor Porter and the conversation that followed that creating shared value is clearly a strategic need going forward. However, I have with me, very eminent people who are representing India Inc. and I'm going to talk about how that transition will happen. So I very quickly want to talk about, while we're sold by the concept, given Professor Porter's spiel on how this will really make companies more strategic and will create economic value, I want to talk about a little bit about how we will make that transition from CSR, which all of you do, to creating shared value, and what are the roadblocks we see in India specifically going forward to make that big leap. So, I'd like to throw the question open to you because I also noticed that GSK was #1 in that list that Professor Porter presented. So why don't you start with telling us where are we in the journey from moving from CSR to creating shared value?
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks very much for having me here on the panel. There are a couple of things that we need to look at. First is healthcare is a subject where actually it falls naturally into shared values, unlike in any other industry. Because if you look at it traditionally, healthcare has been a charitable cause. Even if you look at the way in which healthcare has been delivered in this country, it's all through charitable institutions and through a public hospital. The concept of private healthcare came in way back in 1984 or 85. So fundamentally in India, it makes a huge amount of sense for the shared values, and most of the players in the industry has been doing. Now, you also need to remember is that there are two ends to healthcare. One is public good on the one extreme, and the other one is profit maximization. This whole balance between public good and profit maximization, because at the end of the day, investors are putting in the company, they want you to deliver dividends, they want to increase your profit. On the other end, particularly in India, 65% of the healthcare is delivered by private healthcare. So you are going to have this challenge of how do you maintain this balance. So let me give some example. Professors talked about Arvind Eye Hospital as an example. I'm going back to my olden days where I was a brand manager for intraocular lens when I was in J&J in 1985. And I remember having met Nachiar selling the lens for 4,000 rupees. And in fact, he told me, and his vision was preventable blindness has to be eliminated from this country. Now, he said, your lens is too expensive. I still remember it was 3,000 rupees in 1985, intraocular lens. And he says, you guys need to bring it down. And I have 300,000 people blindness need to be prevented. I can tell you, as an MNC at the time, we're all bringing in new technology. And the best part of it is, we used to sell our sutures, ophthalmic sutures and also lens. What he did is, he created, without going into the model of what he did, he created completely a shared values to it, and $50 for the entire procedure he managed to do is completely disrupted. We have to pull out this entire business. Many of the companies went out of business on intraocular lens. In fact, he started manufacturing lens. So if you really look at the shared values that has happened in this country is very common. Now, in my GSK experience, what we have done, which we're talking about, we completely changed the way in which the pharmaceutical industry operates in the world. So our CEO took this whole approach of saying the business model that we do, of dealing with the way in which we deal with the physicians, the way in which we do access to medicines. As an example, pneumococcal vaccines in India, a lot of children die, 0 to 5, of pneumococcal infection. And in fact, we can easily, very well, sell this vaccine at a price without even coming to price control. We didn't wait for government to do a price control. We dropped the prices by 40%. And in fact, our number of patients we touched, or the babies whom we have touched, has gone up by almost 65%. Similarly, we have done in the area of respiratory and few other areas. So one of the things that Professor also mentioned is that it's more enlightened self-interest, right? It's not that we went into loss for doing that. It's a combination of doing good to society. At the same time, our margins have come down on a short-term basis, but on a long-term basis, we created a scale. In fact, we are putting up a huge factory, and we market about 30% of the global volume of medicines in India, and at a price almost like 1/50th of what you get in the United States. So we need to remember, I think the shared value that he talked about, it makes a huge sense. You can continue to make reasonable profit. At the same time, you can make a huge difference to the people of the country.
Okay, great. But just before I get into company-specific examples, right, I just want all of you to get off your company hats and wear your industry hat so that everybody, feels included in the conversation. So for a minute, if I could ask you about some roadblocks we see in India to actually move to the shared value concept. What would be those roadblocks? For instance, correct me if I'm wrong, but one roadblock we see is all businesses being very short-term and not very long-term in their business view. And that's actually, because of the environment and the competitiveness and the kind of, pressures we have on our bottom lines. Also, if you look at world data in terms of, the average period of a CEO, the tenure, and the average period of a CMO. The average period, global period for a CEO is 4 years. The average chief marketing officer's tenure is 2 years. Given that you don't have, any real plan sustainably going forward, because everybody comes in who's new, it has new pressures, and has, a new business environment and challenges, and, and shareholders to report to. So how does one overcome this short-term view to a more long-term view? Then we can look at, creating shared value in a more long-term visionary manner. Why don't you take that question?
Thank you, Sonali. You see, like you rightly said, the impatience of the shareholders, the bankers who are, lending us money, and also when we are talking about shared value, we are talking about doing good to the communities, where we are talking of solving a problem which actually impacts large number of people. In all these, what happens is innovation is very, very important in terms of product development, in terms of logistics, in terms of pricing, margins. Most of these products which you are selling will be very, very low margin stuff. It's not like you sell a very high-end car and make a lot of money. So you need a lot of patience, and of course the market is also not unforgiving. I mean, it's completely unforgiving. So it will take long time for you to actually scale up and also become profitable. At that time, you need social impact investors. So when I talk about my company, I can tell you it took almost about 6-7 years for us to break even. So how many of the companies will have these kind of impact investors who have that kind of patience? So these are all the challenges which one have to tackle.
Absolutely. If you could also come in on the same, on how do you get incentivized to create shared value? Because I mean, finally, you are running corporate. You are in the business to make money. So unless you're incentivized, you will not suddenly wear on your philanthropic glasses and start philanthropy. So what is the economic incentive that you need to take that direction?
So, building on the theme that Dr. Porter was talking about, we don't put a philanthropic hat on. We are not saying, how do we go out and do good, full stop. We are saying, how do we go out and do good, but also make it work for our business, right? And to your point on continuity, if I just give one sentence on that, it can't be CEO driven, it should be board driven and investor driven. Because CEOs will come and go, but boards and investors are typically more longer term in thinking. And therefore, these two actually meld together, that it has to make sense for the company as well. And the way we think about it is do a pilot, show it works in a small geography or a small population, and then it's a no-brainer to scale it up, right? So that's your question. How do you think about it at a board discussion of doing certain things? And when we come later on company examples, I can talk about it. But the fundamental principle in my mind is, should be board-driven and should be a win-win for the company as well as the target population or target segment that you're trying to address.
I'll give you the last word.
You see, an opportunity can be created by a policy also. It is for the corporate to find that opportunity from any decision that can be taken at the policy level. And how we have done it, I'll just tell you a simple story on that. This is a story of simple ideas, of how seemingly simple ideas can transform institutions, of how the capacities latent in grassroots institutions can be channelized for common good. This is a story that we have developed on neem and urea. We are basically a urea producing company, a fertilizer, chemicals and petrochemicals producing company. Urea, as we know, is the most popular fertilizer in India. Urea is being consumed by almost 120 million farmers in the country. But urea has also non-farm usages. There was a time urea was getting diverted for making of formaldehyde, for production of laminates. There was a time in India, urea was getting diverted for making of CPC blue, for production of dye and dye stuff. There was also a time urea was getting diverted in this country for such horrendous and innovative usages like thickening of milk. And the time I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen, is not a distant past. It was just 2 years back. But one historical decision by Government of India, one historical unprecedented decision by the Prime Minister of India, changed the entire scenario. Urea is no more diverted for any other usages other than farm. The Government of India mandated in May 2015 that each and every gram of urea that is being produced or imported in this country shall be coated by neem oil. And that made it worthless for any industrial diversion. Not only that, it also increased the efficiency of urea because it slows down the conversion of ammonical nitrogen into nitrate nitrogen by almost 10%. We in GNFC, we saw this opportunity. Just to give you a perspective, India consumes 31 million tons of urea in a year, of which 24 million tons of urea is produced by 26 companies in the country, and 7 to 8 million tons of urea is imported. To coat that amount of urea with about 800 grams of neem oil per ton, we require about 26,000 tons of neem oil in this country. For production of 26,000 tons of neem oil, we require about 400,000 tons of neem seeds, which may come for almost about 16 million neem trees. Neem is not a commercial tree. Neem is not popular. Neem is not olive. It doesn't grow on farms. Neem grows in my courtyard, in your backyard, here, there, and everywhere. Now, how to collect that quantity of neem seeds from neem trees is a logistic challenge. And we in JNFC embarked on a process of backward integration by creation of simultaneously shared value with a special focus on empowerment of women and marginalized communities by creating employment opportunities, additional employment opportunities, and also improving their livelihood prospects. We employed thousands and thousands of rural community structures in 4,000 to 7,000 villages of Gujarat, self-help groups, NGOs, all kinds of community structures, water communities, milk cooperative societies, and in a span of just 45 days, we collected 10,000 tons of neem seeds, produced 800 tons of neem oil, and benefited in the process about 125,000 women by creating almost 10 crore, $1.5 million of additional income to those women. In a span of just 2 years, we have collected almost 22,000 tons of neem seeds, produced 1,700 tons of neem oil, used that both for our purpose, sold it off in the market, gone in for forward integration, produced all kinds of neem products, neem soap, neem hand wash, neem face wash, neem shampoo, and neem hair oil. So this is how a policy decision can be seen as a business opportunity and also as an opportunity for creating shared value.
So can I say that the takeaway from that is that there needs to be more policies across industries?
One is, of course, policy intervention.
Yeah.
But even otherwise, like, what Professor Porter was saying, that if we look around, there will be a lot of opportunities for serving the needs of the people. See, the need of the people which our company identified, we are in our 10th anniversary, is in terms of eliminating all the kerosene lamps. I represent D-Light Energy. We are into solar lanterns and solar products and solar home systems. So we are not talking of large, solar panels, rooftop panels. We are talking of small solar lanterns, which are about 500 to 1,000 rupees kind of thing, but which will actually help people in terms of not only, making sure that their health is better because there are no toxic fumes, but also saving money. So getting into this kind of business.
Is that a sustainable business for you? I mean, is it a profitable business?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we have done is, while per unit margin is very low, but we sell millions of these. And we sell to all those communities which, he was mentioning about, the self-help groups, the NGOs, and large number of people. And this is a business where only scale will give you enough profit, not per unit. But to achieve that, it is a lot of hard work in terms of, educating people, ensuring your logistical challenge is properly, taken care. So once we do that, today we are a profitable organization.
Would you say then, because everybody has significant stories to share on creating shared value, would you then say that India is actually doing a lot and is on the, is really moving boundaries when it comes to creating shared value? Or do you think we have some time to go? Because I think we have some time to go, and most of the CSR activities that we see seems to be more of a marketing gimmick, or some kind of a reputation management exercise or campaign just to show that they're doing good. But if once you peel off the layers, there isn't actually much depth to any of those exercises, which is where I come from as a journalist. But clearly, I don't know if that's the view amongst the panelists as well.
No, I would say that we are doing some effort, but we are a very large country. So even a lot in a country like UK or France would be a tiny drop over here, right? And plus, we started from a very disadvantaged economic and social starting point in 1947. So I'll just give a simple example from how Manipal Hospitals is looking at it. As I said, we are a large country. There's a lot of disease out there. There's a shortage of hospital beds. For the last 2 decades, GDP has grown, so there's a lot of money. people are able to spend. It's not as poor a society as it used to be. But there is one obstacle which can't be solved through business models, which is awareness. Typically, awareness should be done through social efforts, media or government and
social
others.
messaging.
But that's still very weak even in the educated parts of India. So just around a year ago, we started a small experiment. We launched a YouTube channel and we bought some content and we got our doctors to answer questions, and those are videoed and put on the YouTube. Guess what? I thought when we launched this that we'll have, you know, a few million hits. In 12 months, we got 30 million views, 30, right? Now that, to your point, is that a lot? I don't think so. In a country of 1.2 billion people, I will be happy if I'm getting 1 billion views in a year, right? But is that more than zero that it was 12 months ago? Definitely. And when I compare this to a global list, Mayo Clinic is the only global hospital which has 36 million views. Even hospitals like Johns Hopkins or Harvard Medical School have lower. So that's to your point, Sonali, that those 30 million people have benefited from a very small initiative from us by watching a video and getting better informed about something. But still, the work that we have to do is so large that, you know, we can keep on doing it for another 10 years and not finish.
At this point, yeah, sure. At this point, if anybody has a question, you know, while we're, you know, discussing this, feel free to just raise your hand, and then so that we can just make it interactive. Yeah, go for it. Gentleman in the front, if somebody could give him a mic.
You can just speak it out. We'll repeat the question.
Yeah, why don't you just, yeah. Oh, why do I say that? Okay. This is mere observation because we've seen many corporates unveil many campaigns. Yeah, data will be there. I'll have to dig it out and give it to you later, you know, when we meet, when the panel is done. Let me ask. It's a good question. Let me ask.
Let me moderate between Sonali and you.
Thank you.
Just let me moderate, please. Yes. And with 31 years of experience, 31 years of experience working in the government at senior positions, I think I can well pronounce on this. You see, what is happening? The new Companies Act 2013, 2% of your profits going into CSR, minimum 2%, you can do more. You know what is happening, that CSR activities, as Michael Porter, Sonali, and many others are feeling, that they are sporadic. She may have been a little harsh on her words by saying that they are PR gimmicks, but the fact remains that they are sporadic, individual, and unconnected. And therefore, since I'm running a public sector company for the last more than 4 years, and having experience in government, I personally feel that CSR activities have to be more aligned with some government initiatives, not necessarily being executed by government. Having said that, I do not mean that money should be handed over to government agencies. There are many flagship programs of government which actually aim at eradicating basic problems in society. For instance, Swachh Bharat Mission, it has been mentioned, Mr. Sarna also mentioned about it. Swachh Bharat Mission has two components, urban component and rural component. Millions and millions of toilets in this country, millions and millions of toilets in this country are yet to be built. One toilet, the government of India, the various state governments have determined the unit cost anything between 12,000 to 16,000. There are better toilets which can be made. In fact, Reliance Foundation, they are making better toilets, costing almost 20,000 rupees. Now, there cannot be a better cause than to contribute for this. Now, it's not necessarily that you should get the toilets constructed by your CSR funds through the government agencies. All the corporates, they are free in their own way to determine a contractor, an agency, and construct toilets. So here the issue is aligning the CSR activities with certain flagship programs being executed by the government, which are much larger in their capacity and their outreach than any individual corporate, whatever be the scale of that corporate, can actually execute. So therefore, in my experience, in my personal view, these CSR activities have to be aligned with larger programs which the government has been executing for so many years.
But you've actually gone back to CSR, which is
CSR,
as opposed to shared value.
Yeah. See, Sonali, you have to understand, we are talking about two distinct activities here. CSR is by law mandated on corporates.
Absolutely.
All right?
Yeah.
CSR, there is a small little fund that, out of the entire corpus has to be used for various activities. How to use that fund depends on your corporate sagacity. How do you wish to use it? You said it, oh, we are using it for various publicity and things. Yes, many a times it happens like that. But how to channelize that more constructively into better channels is what I said. Creating shared value is a business strategy. Creating larger value, connecting your business with the needs of society so as to maximize your own profits, at the same time generate on the other side of the spectrum better advantages to those people who are participating in that activity. So these are two different things. We should not mix CSR with shared
That's
value.
an interesting point. So that's great. I mean, would you agree with what he just said? That they're actually two very different points and we should not mix strategy with CSR, and let's keep that, because if that is the agreement on the panel, then that'd be an interesting way to go.
I guess, I'm not sure there is an either or. CSR is a specific program that companies do have. As an example, in India, you're talking about, large country. If companies try to do everything, it's like boiling the ocean. So you got to pick up your own area where you think you can contribute. For example, we work on eliminating elephantiasis in this country. Now, there are other projects are as good as that, but today we are at the verge of eliminating. WHO is going to announce, I think in next year, they're going to eliminate. So we participate in elimination of elephantiasis. So you got to choose your pick, where you think you have strength, where you can move the needle in a specific area. Like, for example, in toilets, construction, and there are companies who are expert in that. So I tend to agree that CSR is something companies should work, commit themselves to some project. The shared values he talked about is a little more broader in nature, which is a fantastic idea. I think all companies should aim towards it. Are we anywhere near that? I think some companies are somewhere nearby, but it is a great idea to look at. I don't think we are anywhere near in terms of making that happen.
Just to add to what he mentioned.
I agree with him.
Yeah, basically CSR is, for us, in our company, CSR channel is one of the channels. So we have a distribution channel, we have a partnership channel, CSR, because there are lots of companies who are doing fantastic, this thing regarding CSR, hundreds of crores is being spent. So we have tied up with some of the companies in terms of lighting up a village where the company actually sponsors that. So CSR doesn't have to be completely different. It can be integrated in your shared value business, and this can be one of the channels, and you can develop many other channels of business, and all should be running profitably.
Let me come to you. I get a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have yet to figure out a way, given the fact that we are a complex country, large country with many issues, and corporates have their own issues to deal with. So we have yet to figure out a way to incentivize corporates to actually look at shared value as a concept where they have to be incentivized enough to have economic value. So I think we're still looking at CSR because it's mandated, but to move the needle to look at shared value as a concept, and you will actually see returns coming by doing good. I think we're still some way to go. That conceptually we're not yet buying into it.
So if I understand Dr. Porter's concept, incentive is inbuilt into the concept of shared value. It's a for-profit model.
Exactly.
It's an expansion or an extension of what you do anyway, but you do it for a target segment or a target geography or a target disease in a way where you actually make money. So there is the incentive.
Yeah.
So
a good example would be Amul, actually.
Many. You can think about education, you can think about healthcare. I can give you a simple example that if I go and adopt a district of 2 million people, say Shimoga, and I say I'm going to improve infant mortality and maternal mortality in this district using my doctors and nurses. That may sound CSR-ish, but actually, guess what's going to happen to those bypass surgeries and those cancers that come from that district? They're going to come to my hospital and my doctors because they know. So it's a win-win. There is no loser in that segment because the government can't fix it. We have been seeing the government fail at improving healthcare outcomes for the last 50 years. And I think that's the key point which I took away from Dr. Porter's submission, that you don't need subsidy or mandate to incentivize shared value. It's a win-win business model wherein the target customer is winning, you as a company are winning, and the government is watching happily that some social impact is also coming. So I think that's a great thing that we all should take away from this and start to adopt.
Anybody has a question from the audience? Yeah, gentleman there behind. Just stand up so people can see you.
Just say it out loud, we'll repeat the question.
Stuff, yeah, he won't be heard.
You mentioned subsidy, and also we're talking about, when you talk about shared value, you're talking about also the poorest of the poor. My observation is that we have induced a sense of, right for either it being free or it being hugely subsidized, which means I have a right to demand it free or I have a right to get a subsidy on it. And all of which sometimes are in conflict with what a corporation is all about, especially when it comes to profiteering. So how do you solve this jigsaw puzzle? I mean, how do you solve this problem? My question is, if I may also deflect it to Dr. Rajiv Gupta, who heads the public sector, where the control of the government is slightly higher. So I leave you to both to answer it. Did you get my question?
I'll try to repeat what you're asking. So you're saying if a customer comes asking for subsidy, how should a for-profit company be answering that question? And then how should a public sector be on? That's your question, right?
So does that create a conflict? I mean, does that...
Correct. Okay, good point. So our answer is we have to look at our cost structure to see if we can serve that patient, in my case, my customer is a patient, at either a cost break even or even a slight profit. I'll give you a simple example. In the state of Andhra Pradesh, there is a scheme called Arogya Shri. It's a public insurance scheme, and the rates that our hospitals get paid for that are 40 to 50% lower than what a cash patient would pay. Now we have a choice. We can choose not to be a part of Arogya Shri, or we can choose to be a part of that, and that's not mandated by the government. But we choose to be a part of it because it gives capital utilization to our hospitals. We don't lose money on it, we don't make a lot of money on it, but then we make money on the cash patients. So I think the for-profit answer to part of your question, and I'll hand over to Dr. Rajiv, is if your cost structure allows you to serve customers at a slightly lower rate without contaminating or cannibalizing your premier customer, then I think the answer is clear. If you are not able to serve it, then you have to say, I can't do this. And then, for example, if this 5-star hotel was told that you must have 10% poor people coming and living here, quite likely they will say that no, we can't allow that to happen for whatever peripheral reasons those are. So I'll hand over to Dr. Rajiv.
Yes, the issue of subsidy. India gives about $12 billion of subsidy on fertilizer every year. Around 70,000 crores, 80,000 crores. After food, this is the second biggest item of subsidy in India. I talked about urea. I talked about neem. Our end customer is farmer. And farmer presumes that there would be a subsidy on fertilizer. As a urea producing company, we saw this opportunity of mixing neem with urea to create a business model. And that business model created shared values. And the end customer, of course, millions and millions of women now who are involved in collection of neem through our neem project are also from the household of those farmers who actually use our urea. So the company in this country, many items are subsidized. of production, of use, final consumption. So the companies have to see an opportunity and create a business model wherein the subsidy is also taken care of, but at the same time, the company also maximizes its profits by creating a value chain, as Professor Michael Porter had postulated. In case of NEEM project, we have also created another vertical, as I said, by forward integration. Because the amount of neem oil that we have been producing is not only sufficient to take care of our own urea consumption, in-house consumption, which is about 736,000 metric tons of urea. I need about 550 tons of neem oil, but I have excess quantity. So I went in for forward integration. And again, I'm using that forward integration soaps and other products by giving it to the end customer using the same fertilizer selling network. I have about 10 to 15,000 retail fertilizer shops across the country selling my fertilizer and my products. I'm selling my own forward integration products made from neem through them. So ultimately what happens that if a product is subsidized by way of a government policy, and if there is a policy decision that leads to some kind of a business model, there can be a win-win situation created by creation of shared value as we have done.
That's great. Just before I wrap up, if both of you could quickly talk about, very briefly, because my time is up, on how companies should go back to the drawing board in their boardrooms and possibly look at creating, strategic shared value going forward. One or two quick messaging to corporates here, what they should do when they go back.
Yeah, I guess in a minute one can't say much about this, but the whole point is that whatever Professor said makes a lot of sense. There's a template that's been given. The kind of a
Indian context
framework that's been given. So even in Indian context, so as you said, there are quarterly results that the CEO and the board is aware of it, conscious of it. The whole point is that I think there's a shift that has to happen. It's not going to go overnight, but it's about business model. I think what is being said is that you need to look at the business in a transformative way. So you may need that kind of support for people to start looking at the business in a different way, and the shared value will come up. But many other companies were already in the process. I think it's a great way to move forward.
Last words from you.
Yeah, we talked about subsidy. As an organization, we had a different view. Even solar also some subsidies given by the government, and you also need to adhere to the MNRE specifications. So as a company, we decided that we cannot try and navigate all these subsidies and with the government. So we consciously took a decision that we will not play that game. Ours will be completely commercially viable business. So our products are not certified by MNRE. So we said that if the people believe in the value of the product, they will buy. And that's how we actually build this business. That's a conscious decision. And we also developed a lot of village level entrepreneurs who sell our products. And then the company took some time, but it is profitable. So you don't have to play the subsidy game. A company can be profitable even without subsidy.
Fair enough. On that note, I'm totally out of time, but thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your stories. And hopefully going forward, we'll be moving the needle on, co-creating values together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would request you to be on stage for the audience, which should give a big round of applause for this excellent panel discussion. We need to honor them.